Hello and welcome back to the Battery Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Aidan,
And I'm Jack.
and today we will be recapping the very unfortunate Week 1 game that the Cannons had against the New York Atlas, a 19-12 loss at the hands of a refurbished, rejuvenated, and really dangerous looking Atlas squad. Um, in contrast to the Cannons, who obviously they had some chances. The game was close for a while, but it really got away from them in the fourth. So, Jack, where would you like to
Yeah.
start with where the Cannons went wrong?
For me, I think the big storyline is the face-off. Going into it, you knew that the Cannons weren't going to try to win the face-off for a number of reasons. Brian Holman told us as much, but
Yep.
they didn't even dress a Fogo. So clearly they're just going full-blown prevent. On the other side, you've got Trevor Baptiste. So even if you do put in Zach Tucci, sorry, no disrespect, but like you're just not going to win very many faceoffs when you're going up against a guy like Trevor. And I was all for it. Obviously the prevent was a little bit different last year with Rawl having the pull, but I had full faith in Coach Holman. I think that made sense. It clearly worked for the Cannons last year. It clearly worked for the Water Dogs last year. Maybe it
Yeah.
not yesterday, but going into it, I was like, yeah, sure, I'm good with the prevent. I like that strategy. But now I think I'm sort of questioning it, to be honest, just both in game and now today, taking more time looking back at the highlights and just thinking more about it. You can only score if you have the ball.
Yeah.
And so the prevent strategy really only works if you actually prevent the other team from scoring, which the Cannons just didn't do. So I think the big change for me next week is that the Cannons need to dress Tucci and need to actually try to win faceoffs
Yeah.
and get the ball to our offense.
Yeah. I think honestly, a big part of I know part of what made them successful is putting offensive guys on the wings, and I think they even had an offensive
Hmm.
guy in the defensive end, who as soon as Baptiste picked up the ball could sprint forward and join there, so they could get their full offense on almost immediately. And obviously
I
Baptiste
think
can
that's right. Yeah.
contribute offensively as well. He didn't score against the Cannons, but he did score today. Um, and I think if Tucci had been in that game, I think Baptiste, I have the stats up here. Baptiste went 25 for 27 on
Yeah.
faceoffs. And I think one of a couple of those were honestly probably the only two he lost were when he just like clamped and pushed the ball way backwards to give the Cannons a 32-second clock, but they're clearing it with like Kirst or Van Rapport starting deep in their own end. Um,
Hmm.
if Tucci goes in, maybe Baptiste goes like, I don't know, 20 for 27. But at least I think that makes the Atlas feel well, we can't put all offensive guys out there on the faceoff. We have to either have an LSM or we have to have a D mid or ideally both.
One, at
Yeah,
least one.
because the prevent strategy was great in year one, especially when you could have an LSM there. And I think
Hmm.
Ethan Rawl would just stand up, start taking whacks until the guy was able to get rid of the ball or until he dropped it and Rawl picked it up.
Hmm.
Yeah, it.
But
I mean, we'll
yeah,
see.
that
We'll see how it works in week two. Or yeah, but
just just looking at some of the stats, yeah, it was 25 for 27. You said that
yeah,
Baptiste went, yeah. So, and he even stopped playing later in the game because obviously it got out of hand. So overall, I'm looking at it now, and the Cannons were 7 for 32 for the entire game. And if I just do a little bit of math right here, that is 22%.
yeah,
That is not great. And a couple of those came at the end of the game when Trevor is done.
Yeah, they almost all
So
did when it was our short stick D mid against their short stick D mid, which like
that right. And
yeah,
then sure, you have a better shot. But yeah, and speaking of shots, I think it definitely is the face off the issue
yeah,
and just how good the Atlas offense looked. I don't think there were really issues on the defensive end. Obviously, losing Kilty hurts, and getting the new guys, Apple and Yun, together to mesh will take time. But like you see like 19 goals, you're like, oof, did Kirsty had a bad game, man. But he saw 34 shots.
yeah. That's 34 on goal. They had 52
Right.
total.
So he's still over 50% save
Not
percentage.
quite. He was
You're
uh
right. I just did math backwards.
yeah, no, he's 42.
42. Okay, so not ideal,
No,
but
but
not
so many of
abysmal.
those shots, like I have replaying this clip over and over of T like getting a screen at the low wing, basically
Yeah.
ducking under it. Apple was too slow, and he just waltzed right in front of the goal and scored. Like, yes, of course he's going to do that. And
Mhm.
there were a lot of instances, and obviously, like Dixon and Schellenberger and Teat don't need a lot of space to actually be open, but
Right.
they were very open yesterday. And I think Keelty was a big loss, not just for his skills as a player, but also for his communication and being the longest
Mhm.
tenured member of that defense.
He's the
Um,
captain of the D.
yeah, captain of the whole team, and especially the defense. Yeah, he
Mhm.
is such a great, important communicator. And, we'll see who is going to take up that mantle, whether that's Cursed, because he's obviously out there every possession, or whether it's
Mhm.
Epple or Young or Van Raphorst or whoever else they feel is going to be down there every week. Probably those three. Um, but yeah, they were just they were either too slow, they were miscommunicating. Guys were like, oh my, I don't remember who it was, but there was one like they made a great save, but oh, Apple laid a guy out. Um,
Mhm.
and it's safe to assume that guy's going to be hurt. But he gets right back up. No one is covering him. Everyone's looking below the goal line where the ball is, and that's just an easy feed to a guy who's 6 yards in front of the goal and scores.
Yeah.
And, it's very important to make sure that you know where all the offensive players are, and at least one guy is standing next to him, especially when
Big.
he's 6 yards in front of the goal.
Yeah. I watched the press conference with Coach and Apple after the game, and that was something that Holman was talking about was that they got caught watching guys a lot, whether it
Yeah,
be Schellenberger or Teat, and New York did a really good job of having a lot of off ball movement, a lot of motion guys coming down, cutting in, cutting out
yeah,
right in front of the crease. And Holman said it himself that they just didn't do a good job of paying attention to all those guys and all those moving parts. And so if you ignore all the movements and just trust that things are going to work out, well, then you're going
yeah,
to wind up having one guy getting a step on someone. And that's all these guys need at this level is just that little bit of breathing room and they can fire off a shot or get open real quick. Boom, dunk, score. Easy as that.
absolutely. And maybe now we can switch to talking about how incredible the Atlas look. Um,
Yeah.
I like this team they've struggled a lot in the various years or yeah, since the PLO was founded.
Really, since the start, you
Yeah,
thought they were going to be stacked with Rabel that first year, and they stunk.
they at their final game they got blown out like 24-5 or something insane like that. They got us
Right.
destroyed. And Will Manny set the record for most points in a game, which Jeff T tied in this game against the Cannons with 11.
Yep.
Um, I mean the motion the guys they have off ball, on ball is unreal for like Jeff Teat had to do a lot of stuff by himself. This is his third year, I believe, his first 2 years in the league.
Right.
And to have Schellenberg, I mean, Schellenberger didn't play today when we're recording this Sunday due to an injury which he apparently sustained in the game against the Cannons, but I think had been something that was nagging him for the good part of the season in college as well.
Hmm.
But the guys they have to like Schellenberger and T to work off of each other, like on opposite sides of the field, like obviously
It's
no shade to Chris Gray, but that trade is looking fantastic because I think Schellenberger
yeah,
can do a lot more things than Chris Gray can do as a Dodger and as a feeder.
that's going to be a dangerous combo. And actually, Quinn Kesnick was talking to T on the broadcast after the game, and I read this quote, and it literally made me laugh out loud. Was T just when asked about his first experience playing with Schellenberger, T just goes, "No wonder Cormier scored so many goals at Virginia, man."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because Schellenberger's just a wizard. Like the way that he just finds guys, you like T is so good, but he doesn't need to do it all. Schellenberger can just quarterback that offense and just boom. So all T needs to do is get open and bury it.
Yeah.
Two things that
And
he's very good at doing.
yeah, and he helps create offense. Like the fear of him helps create offense because part of that ball watching is, you're thinking, oh, Schellenberger is going to beat his guy. I have to be ready to slide.
Right.
You turn your head, Jeff Teat, Xander Dixon cuts behind you, easy, tap in. And Dixon had three or four of those. Teat had four. It was, yeah, this Atlas team looks really, really good. And um, I'd like to think like they definitely were tired today in their win over the Whipsnakes. I'd like to
Hmm.
think if the Cannons had been that second team, um, if they played them today instead of yesterday, they might have had a better chance. They would have had a better chance to win for sure. Um,
Hmm.
but they still put up 17 today with I think only one 2-pointer, and they only had one 2-pointer yesterday in game one as well. So that
Right.
like they're scoring a lot. And Law and Cormier are going to come back in, who are two also like amazing off-ball guys. Law also is a great feeder. We'll see who comes out of the lineup for that, or who bumps
Hmm.
into midfield. But they have a lot of weapons that um, all the New York Atlas fans should now be very excited.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I forget when it is later in the season, when the Cannons and Atlas play, but
Oh, it's in Fairfield,
oh, down in
July
Fairfield.
20th.
Okay, cool. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see where the teams are
Yeah,
at that point. Um, hopefully the defense will look the same for the Cannons, unfortunately, with Keelty
yeah,
being out. But my hope is that at that point they will be a much more cohesive unit and that they will be better at stopping some of that movement and motion and clamping down more on guys. And who knows, maybe they stick with the prevent in that game. Maybe they've switched to the face-off strategy. And a lot of guys got cut from the 25 man that were the Fogos, the undrafted rookies coming
yeah,
out. So I'm like really curious to see, based off of both how the Cannons struggled and the Water Dogs against the Archers,
yeah,
do we see more face-off guys get picked up? I guess Philly and Boston are really the only two that aren't
yeah.
full
Well,
blown or that
Stathis
are full
is
blown.
coming back. It was,
Right.
yeah,
But when though?
yeah. And
And there's good Fogos, like all the cannons have right now is Tucci. So if the prevent strategy is not going to work, I almost feel like you have to have a second Fogo
yeah,
on the 25 man at least, even if you're only going to dress one of them. I think you would at least need to get another guy. And who's that guy going to be?
I mean, I think the
We'll see.
obvious thing is, call the Whipsnakes because they have LaSalla and Nardella. It was
Right.
LaSalla, and their matchup today, or I suppose I should say yesterday, because this podcast is coming out Monday. But
Mhm.
I don't know if that was injury related or if they really thought that LaSala was the better shot. Could be either one. He wasn't great against Baptiste, but who is? So, the Cannons are playing the Whips week 2, so a trade is unlikely to happen then. Uh,
No, and also from the Whips perspective, I think you want to have two guys that you feel confident throwing out
yeah,
there because you can total part of the reason that Thakis didn't get immediately rostered is because he was just beat up because he took every single face-off at Denver for 4 years.
yeah,
So I the fact that the Whips could split it almost 50-50, just like, the Bruins having the 1A, 1B goalie instead of a one goalie and a two goalie. If you can have two face-off guys that each take 50% of the draws,
yeah.
that
Especially for home.
that saves you later in the season. You're not going to
Yeah.
be as worn down.
Yeah, it's a bummer that the Whips homecoming is so late, and that's the second time that the Cannons play. I just did a quick look because
Yep.
I think playing a team the second day of their homecoming weekend is a for sure advantage. That's the Cannons' only one, unfortunately.
Mm,
'Cause they put the Whips on the second day. Um, but if I would for sure expect, um, well, we can talk about this with the snakebait guys later this week, but I would for sure expect LaSalle to have one game and Nardella to have the other, assuming they're both like healthy and one isn't
right.
clearly better than the other at that time.
Right. But what any other takeaways from the game for you?
Let's see. Well, Pat Kavanaugh, that is, was a bit. I mean, well, a lot of guys were underwhelming, especially offensively. I think, but Kavanaugh, maybe he hasn't quite found his role in the offense yet. It's obviously a
Hmm.
very different one than he had in college, where
Yeah.
most of the time the offense was running through him. And he
Right.
only he only had one practice because of the Tewaaraton ceremony. Of course, that didn't stop Schellenberger from going
Nope.
off. But yeah, that was an underwhelming. It was one assist pretty early on in the game, in the first quarter, and then
It
I
was
think
two. Oh no, actually, it was on the Campbell too. But never mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, and I think part of what had the game get away from the Cannons in the fourth quarter was a lot of sloppy play and turnovers, like
Yep.
passes to no one, passes out of bounds. Um, I think maybe some of it was trying to play like catch up. Is oh we got 5 minutes left, we're down by 5, we're down by 6, we got to score now.
Yep.
But there were long, long stretches without a goal, especially in that fourth quarter. And the
Hmm.
Atlas just kept
They
firing.
just kept going.
Yeah.
And he got a little bit chippy there at the
Oh
end
yeah.
too. That both Kavanaughs were kind of scrapping in there. We
Yeah. Well,
got
I think once one of them gets in there, the
you,
other one's coming. Assuming.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, that's my brother.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Quite
it's the same with the
literally, that is
Aslanians.
my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That same thing, that same exact situation happened in
Champ
the
series.
Champ Series championship when
Yep.
I think
Pat
it,
had
it
a high
was
hit.
Stout that caught
Stout hit
knocked
Sours,
Sours out,
and then
and
Pat
then
Aslanian had that high check from
I won
behind
on Taylor,
against. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Trainer.
crit or
Yeah.
trainer.
Jack Trainer.
Yes, thank you.
And then
Yeah,
then Chris came over and that was a whole hullabaloo as
and
well. That
yeah.
was this game was not as chippy as that championship series, but
No, but
that was quite a scrum.
definitely felt like a Boston New York matchup
Yeah,
for sure.
which I love.
Definitely gave that vibe,
Yeah. Um
Um,
yeah. I think we also need to touch just briefly on how incredible Tim Troutner was.
yeah.
In game 1 and game 2. He was, let me look at the stats. He was, I think, well above
He's
50%.
he,
Uh
he I'm just gonna say it. He's good at lacrosse.
yeah, I think the guy who wins Rookie of the Year, it is safe to say that about him.
Yeah.
Well, won it 5 years ago now, but still, he was. The website's not loading quite. There we go. Goaltending, Troutner, 13 saves, 54.2%. So yeah, 13 saves, 12 goals allowed.
Yep.
No, 11 because we had one 2-pointer.
Right.
Um, and in game 2, but also, I mean, that first sequence that he had, like what ridiculousness to basically
Oh.
be on his knees, just lean and throw his stick, and somehow Drenner's aiming for that exact spot, and it doesn't go in. Like after the first save was already incredible. Um,
Right. And the Atlas had gone down and scored like 6 seconds into the game too.
yeah,
So that I was just like, oh, well, okay then
yeah,
after that goal. And then our first shot with the ball, or like our first opportunity with the ball on offense, and Troutner does that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, is that really
yeah,
how today's gonna go? And we
kind of
kept
was.
it close for about 2.5 quarters. So you kind of forgot that that was your initial reaction. But then obviously they pulled away, and I was like, oh, I guess that actually was a sign for what was to come.
Yeah. Stroudner played again in the second game, and I got that up here. He made 14 saves, 58.3%, which is another fantastic. After especially his counterpart, Kyle Bernlaw got pulled about 6 minutes into the game, did not make a save. He allowed 6 goals, did not make a save. Um, I forget. There's a hockey player, Brendan Krebs. Yeah, there's a hockey player, Peyton Krebs. I always mix their first names up.
Mhm.
Brendan Krebs came in, did better. Still could not match Troutner, and plus when you're putting a 6-0 hole to start the game, makes it a bit
Yeah.
difficult to come back.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with Troutner, Entman, the Atlas goalie
Yeah,
situation. I'm honestly not surprised that they stuck with Troutner today. That my initial thought was that they would split them,
yeah,
but same thing with Pat Cav and Schellenberger. Entman had one practice on Friday, didn't even see any real shots because it's the day before
yeah,
a back to back. So it makes sense. And Troutner played so well the day before. Like, sure, yeah, just throw him back in. But I think a lot of people assumed that Entman was just going to be the starter for this team. But after the way that Troutner played those first two games, I think you at least have to start him next week
yeah. I think
too.
so
Like,
too.
you can't just not play him now.
Yeah, that I agree. I think Entenmann should need to earn the job, and maybe he does that in week one, or I don't know, something else happens. Troutner's flight gets canceled and he can't make it. Um, but yeah, that Troutner was like going into year one of the PLO. We assumed that Jack Kelly was going to be the goalie for the Outlaws. He got hurt. Troutner came in, won Rookie of the Year, and Kelly had to work his way back to being the starter, and it took him really like 3 years to do that.
Yeah.
And by last year, he certainly was the better goalie on the roster, but you know, Troutner seems to have found new life in New York. Certainly, it helps that um, he got traded for, that or signed with as a
Hmm.
um, so that they want you there, and that especially with Kincannon retiring, that you're coming in to be the guy. Obviously, Entman getting drafted does kind of change that,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think it's got to be Troutner's job to lose at least for next week. And I hope he does well, except that game on July 20th when he plays the Cannons.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe let's just quickly recap the other games for our diehard lax heads out there. So the other game week, day one, was the championship rematch of the Archers and the Water Dogs. I'm sure that's the reason they put it first. Um, I really couldn't believe, like, you think, oh, 12-11, like close game, final score, the Archers won. The way that they got there was so wacky. Um, Similar to the game against the Archers went up, I think it was 5-1. Uh, and then they kind of traded goals. The Archers made it 10-4 with four, about 8 minutes to go in the third quarter. They didn't score again. The Water Dogs scored seven in a row to make it 12-11. Um, they did that with, I think, about 4 minutes left, and that was the final score. The Water Dogs did not score the final 20 minutes of the game. Sorry, the Archers did not.
Crazy.
Yeah, especially for an offense that had scored again like five in the first quarter, had 12. 4 minutes into the third to then get shut out the rest of the way is wild.
Hmm.
Um, what do we got? First game today. Sorry, yesterday when you're listening to this, the Chaos versus the Outlaws, the newly arisen from the ashes Outlaws. The Chaos held on to win at 16-11. The big story from that is unfortunately Blaze Reardon left in the second quarter with an injury. It seems that he dislocated his knee, which is apparently not the first time. And so the hope is he'll be back in Charlotte for their homecoming, which is great. Although I would think again, Kaut will probably get one of those games. He played pretty well in relief. And with
Hmm.
a week to prepare, he should hopefully do a little bit better. Um, Unfortunately, it looks like the same old Outlaws a little bit. They did score 11, but on the losing side again. Luke Weirman, though, was definitely the better of the two face-off guys. I think he was for sure the right choice as the first guy to go off the board in that category.
Yep.
And then we've already said we ended it. The Atlas won again, 17-13 over the Whips. Um, they went up 10-1 again in the second quarter. And then I think the fatigue caught up with them because the Whips closed it to, I think 15-12. No, 14-12. It was a two-goal game.
Hmm.
Um, but the Atlas found enough juice to pull it out. They scored the last couple, including Kobe Smith two-pointer. That gave them a lot more breathing room.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's your recap of the other scores of week one. So the Atlas, of course, lead the standings at 2-0. The Cannons are at the bottom at 0-1, but then score differential being the next tiebreaker. They're -7.
Yep.
Um, the Whips will be
Only
next.
way to go is up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, the same thing happened last year. I don't remember the final score of week one, but I do remember they lost.
The Cannons lost their first two games, I think, and then rattled off a bunch.
Yeah.
So
Would love for them to win next week against the Whips. Just
yeah.
to, get back on the right track. Um,
Yeah,
I
we'll see.
I do still anticipate them being in the play. I mean, in the playoffs for sure. I think
Hmm.
first or second. Well, I would have said first or second. Man, the Atlas look good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
they look good. They got the homecoming sweep.
yeah.
Props to
See how
them.
many more teams can do that.
Hopefully we can do that. Fourth
Yeah.
of July. And last thing that I wanted to shout out was just the field looked so great. The PLL did such a good
Yeah.
job of the branding with the homecoming, having the Atlas banners all over. The New York logo on the hill looked really cool. And all I could think about watching it is I cannot wait to see Harvard
Yeah.
Stadium draped in Boston Cannons. It's gonna be so electric.
Oh, but yeah, it's gonna be fantastic because they can really. I mean, it's a pretty open stadium. Like one end is open.
Yeah,
I believe they're only selling one side and kind of into the back, so they could put Boston stuff all on the opposite side of the
all
crowd if they
there.
wanted to.
So yeah,
Um,
it'll be
yeah,
good. But
hopefully they can scrape that H off the field for one game and put the Cannons logo up. I wasn't paying attention if the no, the Atlas logo was not on the center field.
no, it was all the Albany stuff.
Yeah. All right, so
But
maybe that's unrealistic, but at the very least, there'll be a lot of Boston stuff. Yeah, draped all
yeah,
over that weekend. Can't wait. I'm sure the Cannons will be. I'm sure they will have gotten a win by then. So that'll be
yeah. Well, yeah. We this
yeah, three more
weekend
chances.
going down to Charlotte. Let's
Yep,
go beat the Whipsnakes.
absolutely. We will be back on Thursday with a preview of that matchup. Should have one of the members of the Whipsnake supporter group, the Snake Pit, with us. Talk about how they felt about week one, presumably not very good. What they think they need to focus on for week two. Um, and we'll see. We'll see who gets the win, who gets to scrape out of get above the bottom of the league there, get into the win column, and hopefully give the Atlas a fright.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, we will be back on Thursday. Thank you all for listening, and go Cannons.
Boom.